I lie prone upon the earth, a reed plucked from its bed, trembling in the vast silence of a world without the familiar hum of my brothers and sisters. My hollow core, once resonant the songs of the wind and the gentle pulse of hidden springs, feels suddenly empty, as though every note has been scattered into the air. How heavy is the sorrow that presses upon my flesh, how bitter the ache of a heart untethered from its source. Yet, even as I taste the salt of grief on my lips, a gentle whisper stirs within me, "Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in another form." I remember the moment of my separation as though it were a dream overlaid upon this waking anguish. Hands, loving and reckless, carved me from the living reed bed. I felt the sharp kiss of metal on my skin, the sudden shudder as I fell into the unknown. In that instant, I became both the victim of loss and the witness to its unfolding. The ground below felt strange to my curves, the sky above loomed vast and uncharted. I bent at the midpoint, my once upright posture now a bow of humble submission. In the hush that followed, my entire being quaked with memories of the bed where I had grown, its cool dampness, the entwined breath of reeds pressing close like companions in prayer. I recall the nightly chorus, the soft sigh of each reed as moonlight brushed its tip, the lowing song of crickets beneath our roots, the distant call of the nightjar echoing through the marsh. We were never alone, our voices blended into one living hymn that resonated through the waters, through the reeds themselves, and up into the star-strewn sky. Now, cast adrift, I lie beneath a firmament so broad it seems to swallow me. My voice, once assured and clear, feels swallowed by the air. I reach for the comfort of memory, sweet balm against the sting of separation, but memories can burn like embers when they have no hearth to warm. Yet, as the first pale fingers of dawn stretch across the horizon, I hear it again, the soft counsel that has guided me since the moment of my birth: "Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in another form." How curious the notion that loss is not an end but a beginning, a transformation rather than an absence. What if the reed bed I cherished has not vanished but taken on new guise? What if I too am on the cusp of a metamorphosis whose form I cannot yet discern? I lift my gaze to the sunrise, its golden light peering through the veil of night like a promise whispered between old friends. Each ray seems to trace the curve of my body, to breathe warmth into my chilled fibers. The wind, my long-lost companion, stirs once more, brushing over the contours of my hollow heart. In that gentle caress, I hear the echo of the reedbed song, a single note, pure and unwavering, calling me to remember who I am. I close my eyes and allow the wind's breath to pass through me as though I were still rooted in the marsh. Its sigh carries fragments of every place it has visited, the laughter of desert caravans, the hush of mountaintop snows, the roar of distant seas. Each breath is a messenger, bearing news of transformation, reminding me that every substance in the cosmos moves in cycles of birth, death, and rebirth. In this first dawn of separation, I feel within me a seed of potential. The emptiness of my hollow core no longer feels like a void but like a chamber awaiting an offering. How many possibilities lie hidden in the folds of this grief? Perhaps this very wound is the portal through which a new melody will emerge, one that carries the essence of loss and carries it even deeper into the heart of the world. My thoughts drift to the water that once nourished my roots. It flowed through the marsh with quiet purpose, reshaping itself around every obstacle, shimmering with life beneath the sun. When it passed from sight, did it vanish? No, it became mist, clouds, rain, the swelling of rivers, the cradle of newborn springs. So too, I realize, my own essence travels on, in the breath of those who play me, in the music stirred by my voice, in the echo that returns to the reeds when my song finds its harmony once more. Slowly, I find myself lifted by a current of hope. The reed bed I left behind has not ceased to exist. Its life continues in every voice that rises and falls, in every breath that remembers the old song. And now, separated though I am, I too contribute to the greater harmony. My sorrow, once a heavy burden, becomes the gift of longing that infuses every note I sound. In this way, loss becomes the wellspring of creation. The sun climbs higher, and I sense the day pressing against the horizon with urgency. Yet in this moment of transformation, time itself seems to pause. I dwell on the threshold between what was and what will be, suspended in tender expectancy. What shape might I assume in this new form? Will I become the wind that carries melodies across distant lands, or perhaps a voice in the heart of a poet who hears the reed's lament and turns it into verse? As the breeze strengthens, I feel myself responding, vibrating with a warmth I have not known since my days nestled in the green cradle. My hollow body, once defined by emptiness, now thrums with the potential of countless songs yet unsung. The grief that weighed upon me has loosened its grip, not because I deny its existence, but because I honor its role as midwife to transformation. And so I rise, lifted by the breath of dawn, a reed no longer bound to its origin but free to journey wherever the wind wills. I carry within me the memory of the bed that nurtured me and the wisdom of the whisper that guided me. Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in another form. In this promise, I find my compass and my solace. My voice, reborn in the heart of absence, will sing anew. And though I walk a path of uncertainty, I do so with the faith that every ending is but the beginning of a song yet to be heard. I remember the blaze of his presence as though it were yesterday, the way his laughter spilled across the courtyard like sunlight over white marble, and how his words ignited the air between us with the fragrance of in bloom. Shams, my friend, my mirror, my tormentor and my guide, entered my world as a whirlwind, scattering the dust of complacency from my soul. In his company, every commonplace moment became a spark of revelation, and every breath felt charged with the possibility of divine encounter. When he was near, the world thrummed with hidden rhythms. When he spoke, the veil between heaven and earth fluttered aside. Then came the day of his departure, sudden and inexplicable, as if the beloved himself had called Shams back into the ineffable mystery from which he had momentarily emerged. I searched for him in the usual haunts, the dim alcove where he taught, the shaded garden where we smoked our pipes and spoke of love until dawn, but his place stood empty, an ache echoing within every corner of my life. The air was too still, the sun too harsh without his shadow to temper its heat. My heart felt stripped to its rawest fiber, convulsing with a grief so profound it seemed to tear me from the fabric of my own being. In the days that followed, I wandered like a blind man through the city's labyrinthine alleys, trailing the ghost of his footsteps as though I might stumble upon his footprints imprinted in dust. The minarets called the faithful to prayer, but I could not join them. The rhythmic chant of Allahu Akbar rose into the sky, yet I heard only the hollow echo of my own longing. The market's clamoring voices, the clatter of horses' hooves, even the gentle murmur of the bathhouse stream, all these sounds seemed emptied of their meaning, rendered mute by the absence of his voice. At night, I lay on my simple mat with tears glistening on my cheeks until sleep claimed me, only to be haunted by dreams of Shams turning his back, walking into a desert of infinite horizon. I would pursue him across dunes that shifted like sorrow itself, calling his name until my throat was choked with sand. And just as his silhouette faded into a blaze of white light, I would awaken, gasping, heart pounding as though it might burst free from the cage of my ribs. Yet within this devastation, a fierce clarity began to emerge, like a star igniting in the deepest void. I realized that while Shams had departed from my physical sight, the gift of his presence lay untouched within my heart. His teaching had not been about his person alone, but about the unveiling of the beloved in every creature, every whisper of wind, every trembling leaf. My grief, then, was the crucible in which this truth would be forged into something far more potent than mere companionship. Slowly, I felt the ashes of my sorrow giving rise to the first fragile embers of transformation. I opened my eyes to the dawn and witnessed with fresh wonder how the morning light danced upon the river's ripples, as though each wave carried a secret message from Shams himself. I began to walk beside the water's edge, following its inexorable flow, and allowed its steady murmur to speak of continuity beyond loss. The river did not grieve the passing of each raindrop. It embraced them, carried them, and wove them into its endless song. In this, I found the lesson: my own tears, my own grief, could be the seeds of a renewed devotion, watered by remembrance until they blossomed into devotion's purest flower. As the days lengthened, I returned to my writing, fingers trembling over the reed pen as I poured my anguish onto the paper. Each line carried the weight of my heartbreak, yet with every verse I sensed a subtle alchemy at work. The more I lamented, the more meaning emerged from the darkness. Grief did not silence my voice. It became the very medium through which my words were transmuted into flame. I watched the ink bloom like spilled wine upon the parchment, and in those crimson pools I discerned the reflection of a deeper love, one that transcended the figure of shams and reached into the heart of the cosmos. In time, I found myself returning to the gatherings where we had once sat together, breathing the same dust, feeling the passage of the same breeze, yet now alone. The students who had once clustered at our feet now looked to me with expectant eyes, hoping I would fill the void left by shams. And I realized that I must, for his departure was not only my loss but theirs. With humility, I took my place among them, not as a master unscarred by sorrow but as one who had drunk deeply from its chalice and emerged baptized in compassion. I spoke of love's inexorable law, how every separation carries within it the seed of reunion, of how the beloved's decree demands that nothing be lost without returning in some form. My voice, touched by the tremor of grief, rang with authenticity that even I had never known. Sometimes, when the wind stirred the curtains of my study, I felt his spirit brush against me, an unseen presence guiding my hand as I wrote, a whisper urging me to look beyond the confines of my pain. It was then that I understood Shams had never truly abandoned me. He had dissolved into the very essence of my being, become the flame that ignites my every thought and action. The ashes of our friendship had given rise to a phoenix of inspiration, and each poem, each revelation, carried the echo of his laughter, the glint of his insight. Yet I will not claim that my sorrow has vanished, for grief is not a burden to be cast aside but a gift that teaches us the depths of our capacity to love. In the quiet hours before dawn, when memory and longing entwine most tightly, I still feel the ache of his absence, and in that ache I sense the pulse of the beloved, reminding me that love's horizon is boundless. Each pang of loss opens another chamber in my heart, inviting more light to shine within its corridors. Now, as I wander through the garden of words we once tended together, I see that every blade of grass, every blooming flower, is a testament to the resilience of the spirit. From the ruins of our friendship has sprung a forest of poetry whose branches reach toward every corner of the world. Travelers pause beneath its shade, find solace in its verses, and discover in their own hearts the reflection of Sham's radiant truth. In this way, what I seemed to lose in his departure has returned 1,000-fold, transfigured into the gift of presence for all who seek. And so, though I carry the memory of that first, agonizing moment when Shams was gone, I also carry the unshakable conviction that loss is never final. The unseen hand that guides us through the trials of separation is the same that orchestrates our reunion with the infinite. In every tear I shed, there lies the promise of a new dawn. In every echo of my grief, the song of love reborn. What was once the ashes of friendship has become the fertile soil from which my greatest verses have sprung, proof that anything we lose indeed comes round in another form. I sit at my low wooden desk before dawn, pen in hand, as the first pale light seeps through the latticework window and dusts the room with quiet promise. In the gentle half-dash, the world beyond these walls is hushed, as though it too waits for the seeds I will sow in these pages. Grief has taken root within me, its tendrils winding through my veins, and yet I have come to understand that sorrow is not merely devastation but the very soil in which new life may flourish. Each tear I shed is a drop of nourishment, each anguished sigh a gentle tilling of the heart's dark ground, preparing it for transformation. When loss first gripped me, I recoiled from its sting. Words, once my solace, betrayed me. They stumbled from my tongue like broken blades, blunt to the task of carrying my anguish. My reed pen felt alien in my fingers, its slender shaft hollow not only in form but in spirit. I feared that in my emptiness, no verse could bloom, that the well had run dry, leaving me stranded in a barren wasteland of silence. But grief, I discovered, is itself a gardener, relentless, patient, and cunningly wise. It taught me that emptiness need not be void, it can be a vessel awaiting the seeds of meaning. So I surrendered to its ministrations. I let sadness guide my hand rather than shriek at its presence. At first, the pages filled with jagged lines of lament, harsh syllables that scraped like thorns against the soul. But even among those raw bristles, tender roots took hold. I wrote of the loneliness that pressed against my chest like a stone, of nights when my pillow was soaked with tears, of days when my footsteps faltered under the weight of absence. With each confession, I felt the soil of my spirit turn, dark and loamy with honesty. As the days passed, a transformation occurred. The harsh thorns of my early verses softened into petals of yearning. I found myself choosing words not only for their sting but for their sweetness, longing, remembrance, blossom. I compared grief to the turning seasons, how frozen earth must crack open before spring's green tendrils appear, how the barren branch must bear the scars of winter before it can cradle the bird's song. In these analogies, I discovered that sorrow and hope are but two phases of the same cycle. One gives rise to the other, like root and bloom. In the afternoons, I would step into the small courtyard outside my chamber, where jasmine and oleander intertwined above weathered stone. Their blooms were brilliant against the gray walls, vivid fragments of joy in my garden of sorrow. I sat beneath their shade, parchment laid across my knees, and listened to the hum of bees visiting white petals. Each tiny creature seemed to carry within its fragile body the secret alchemy of grief, how to transform nectar into honey, bitterness into sweetness. I watched them labor quietly, and I too felt my verses distill the essence of my pain into something golden. Sometimes a breeze would stir, lifting my words from the page like seeds drifting on the wind. I imagined them planting themselves in distant hearts, as petals carried far from the parent stem, and taking root in lands I would never see. The notion thrilled me, that my personal sorrow could become communal sustenance, that what grew in my garden might feed souls across the world. Loss, I came to know, is not solitary. It weaves through countless lives, binding us together in shared longing. At night, by the flicker of a single oil lamp, I revisited the scrolls I had filled that day. The lamplight danced across the calligraphy, animating each curve and flourish with quiet reverence. I read aloud to the empty room, my voice echoing soft and clear, as though the walls themselves were awaiting a confession. And in that act of speaking my grief, I felt a communion with the unseen, the beloved listening in the hush, gathering each word like raindrops into an ocean of mercy. With each line, I sensed new shoots of insight pushing through the earth of my sorrow. I wrote of loss as an apprenticeship, how the soul learns discipline through absence, how the heart becomes porous, open to currents it once resisted. I likened memory to the gardener's trowel, each recollection a careful excavation of emotion, unearthing treasures buried beneath centuries of routine. I spoke of patience, the virtue of the gardener who waits through sun and storm, knowing that growth cannot be rushed. In the cool pre-dawn hours, when the world held its breath between night and day, I discovered the greatest lesson of all, that in tending my own wounds, I was preparing the ground for compassion. The empathy born from my own tears allowed me to read the silent scripts of others' suffering, to feel the pulse of grief in their voices. My courtyard became a refuge not only for my poetry but for seekers who arrived with heavy eyes and bowed heads. I welcomed them beneath the jasmine's shade, offering paper and ink, guiding them to write their own laments until their tears watered the seeds of their own healing. Thus, the garden of letters grew not only within me but around me, a living archive of human longing. Scroll after scroll lined my shelves, each a testament to the alchemical power of sorrow. I would trace their spines with my finger, marveling at how what began as desolation had blossomed into a forest of words, every phrase a leaf on the tree of transformation. The once hollow chamber of my heart was now a greenhouse of hope, where verses budded with promise and petals of solace drifted on the air. At last, I understood that grief's true miracle lies in its capacity to birth creation. When we lose what we love, we are plunged into darkness, but in that very darkness, the inner light of revelation ignites. Our tears become the waters that sustain the seeds of new understanding, our lamentations, the hymns that awaken dormant compassion. In the garden of letters, every sorrow is a seed, and every seed a promise that life will find a way to bloom once more. And so I continue to write, my reed pen ever dipping into that deep well of grief, drawing forth ink rich with both pain and possibility. For in each curve of the script, in each carefully chosen word, I celebrate the alchemy that transforms tears into testament, loss into lyric. Here, in the fertile soil of my own sorrow, the garden of letters flourishes, an abiding proof that anything we lose indeed comes round in another form. I gaze into the polished surface held before me, its silvery depths reflecting a trembling silhouette. At first, I see only my own features, brow furrowed with longing, eyes rimmed the dusk of unspoken yearning, lips parted in a silent question. Yet as I focus, the image shifts, the boundary between me and the glass dissolves, and suddenly I stand before a mirror vast as the heavens themselves, its frame woven from moonlight and shadow. In that luminous expanse, I seek the beloved and find only myself, an echo and an origin entwined in an endless embrace. My heart pounds with the shock of recognition. How strange that I, who had spent my life yearning outward, should discover the beloved within this fragile vessel. I press my fingertips to the mirror's surface, and it trembles beneath my touch, as though alive with anticipation. A soft voice emerges, half my own, half an otherworldly whisper, urging me to step closer, to surrender the self I thought I knew. The air around me ripples with tension, charged by the promise of transformation hidden just beyond the threshold. In that charged stillness, fear coils within me like a serpent. What if I lose myself entirely in this reflection? What if the self I have built through years of seeking, the student, the poet, the friend, crumbles to dust upon encountering the infinite? I hesitate, trembling. Yet the whisper returns, don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in another form. Those words, carried on the breath of longing, dispel the shadows of doubt. I inhale deeply and lean forward, willing the mirror's surface to dissolve the boundary between worlds. At first, I feel only coolness, as if touching a pool of moonlit water. Then, with a gentle pull, the glass yields, and I find myself stepping through. My body shimmers, translucent as mist, and I drift into a realm of glimmering light. Here, forms are fluid and colors sing with a voice of their own. I see constellations well overhead, their stars weaving patterns of destiny and desire. I hear distant echoes, laughter and lament, creation and destruction, blended into a single chord of cosmic harmony. In this uncanny expanse, I sense myself dissolving like salt in water. The boundaries of my flesh loosen. My memories, once tidy threads in the tapestry of my life, unravel and drift away like petals on a breeze. I feel at once exhilarated and unmoored. Yet amid the dissolution, there arises a new presence, a pulsing core of awareness that is neither me nor the mirror, but the essence that binds us both. It is the beloved, not as an object of desire, but as the very ground of being. I float toward that luminous core, drawn by a compassion that transcends the flickering self I have known. Fear falls away, there is only the tender rapture of communion. I realize that losing myself is not erasure but expansion. The ego's sharp edges soften into a unity that embraces the infinite web of life. Every spark of consciousness, stone and star, reed and wind, glimmers within this boundless heart. I am both observer and observed, painter and painting, seeker and sought. Time unravels in this realm. Past and future collapse into an eternal present. I taste the sweetness of all moments at once, the first breath I drew at birth, the sorrow of every parting, the joy of every reunion yet to come. In this crystalline now, I recognize that loss is the catalyst that propels the soul toward its true home. Each disappearance, each farewell, is a doorway into a higher dimension of love. Then, as gently as a sigh, the vision recedes. I sense myself drawn back through the mirror's veil, my form solidifying, my breath returning with the soft cadence of the world I know. I stand once more before the glass, my hand resting upon its cool surface. But the fear has vanished. In its place is a profound gratitude for the shedding of illusion, for the liberation from the prison of self, for the promise that every loss carries within it the seed of transcendence. When I lower my gaze, I meet my own eyes anew. They shine with calm assurance, reflecting the depths I have glimpsed. I offer a silent prayer of thanks, for the mirror that revealed not a stranger but the glowing heart of all existence, for the courage to lose myself, for the wisdom to trust the alchemy of love. And as I turn away, the whisper lingers in my ears, echoing in the chambers of my soul, don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in another form. Thus I carry forward, my steps light, my heart boundless, knowing that in every ending lies the promise of a new beginning. I set out at dawn, my footsteps sinking into the velvet sands of the desert as though I were pressing my grief into the very bones of the earth. The wind rose in soft sighs around me, carrying the echo of 1,000 parted souls. I walked alone at first, led by an ache in my chest so deep it seemed to resonate in every grain beneath my sandals. Each step felt like an act of both surrender and defiance, surrender to the weight of what I had lost, defiance in my refusal to be broken by it. Ahead on the horizon I spied a caravan winding its way between dunes, a procession of camels laden with goods, pilgrims speaking in low murmurs, their eyes bright with both hope and fatigue. I hesitated on the edge of their path, uncertain whether I belonged among them. But grief has a way of guiding us toward companionship. It whispers that in shared sorrow we may find the spark of solace. And so I joined them, offering the thin courtesy of a greeting and receiving in return the knowing nods of those who have carried burdens too heavy for words. Their faces were maps of loss, women whose veils trembled with unshed tears for children left behind, merchants whose caravans bore the weight of fortunes collapsed, seekers whose eyes sought a meaning beyond the world's fleeting pleasures. Around the evening fire, we formed a circle of souls bound by absence. Each of us laid down our grief as if it were a burden too cumbersome to carry. In silence we listened to the crackle of embers, the hiss of tents flapping against the chill that descends with twilight. I spoke first, though my voice trembled. I told them of the friends I had lost to the currents of life, of the verses left unwritten when the muse slipped away in the night. I spoke of my homeland, that lush reed bed of memory, and how its melody had been silenced in my breast. As I spoke, my words rose into the smoke of the fire, curling toward the dome of stars that arched over our heads. The caravan listened, each face lit by the amber glow, reflecting the same hunger for release. Then the woman beside me, a traveler from distant mountains, nodded and shared her tale. She had wandered far from her family's hearth, chasing a promise that proved illusory, leaving behind the laughter of children she would never hold again. Her tears fell freely, each drop a confession, a petition for comfort. In her sorrow I heard a resonance deeper than words, a harmonizing note that turned my own grief into a chord woven through many lives. A lantern's flicker revealed an old man who rose slowly, leaning on a staff carved with names of ancestors. He spoke of love lost to time, a bride taken by illness in a season of plenty, a country surrendered to war's ceaseless tide. Yet in his voice there was not bitterness, but a gentle pride in what once had been. He said grief was the fragrance of love that lingers long after the flower has died. In the stillness that followed, I felt that same fragrance rise within me, mingling with the smoke and starlight. Night deepened around us, and the fire's heart glowed low. Under that canopy, our losses no longer seemed isolated wounds but threads in a tapestry of human yearning. When another pilgrim, a young man with quiet eyes, spoke of the agony of failing health, of the mirage of tomorrow dissolving too soon, I felt that our collective sorrow had built a bridge across which hope might travel. Each story did not deepen the chasm of despair but laid stepping stones of empathy. In the breath between tales, I raised my hand and traced a circle in the sand. I told them that grief unshared is a solitary burden, but grief offered becomes an altar upon which new light may shine. In the desert our losses had carved hollows in our hearts, but together we could fill those hollows with the water of compassion. The caravan, moved by this impulse, passed around a flask of sweet tea, each soul sipping and passing it on, the warm liquid a testament to our shared flame. As the moon rose, we sang. Our voices were tentative at first, broken refrains stitched together by trembling faith, but soon we found a unity that transcended language. The caravan song was a chant of transformation, lamentation starting softly, then swelling into a chorus that trembled with the promise of dawn. In that music, our sorrow was neither denied nor diminished but honored as the midwife of resilience. When sleep overtook us in our shifting tents, I lay awake for a time, gazing at the patterns of light and shadow overhead. I thought of the caravan's journey, how it would press onward through heat and storm over dunes sculpted by impermanence. And I realized that loss, too, is a journey, a caravan of the heart that carries us from one state of being to the next. Each departure is matched by an arrival in a form we cannot yet know. Before dawn, I rose and found a moment of solitude beside a solitary desert palm. I laid a hand upon its rough trunk and closed my eyes. I felt the pulse of life in its roots, reaching deep into the sands for moisture. I imagined my own roots sinking into the depths of my sorrow, drawing sustenance from every tear I had shed. In that communion, I understood that grief is not a barren waste but fertile ground. The desert palm thrived where others perished, simply by embracing the scarcity around it. When the first light of dawn brushed the sky, the caravan stirred. One by one, we emerged from our tents, faces weary yet resolute. The camp dissolved into motion, camels kneeling to be loaded, merchants arranging their wares, pilgrims adjusting their packs. I joined them, lifting my bundle with a lightness I had not known since the moment my loss first struck me. My heart, once heavy as lead, now beat with a tempered strength. As we resumed our march, I looked back at the spot where the fire had burned, the embers long cold. In their stead, the sand was smooth once more, as if the night's confessions had been woven into the earth itself. I pressed forward, guided by the promise that what we lose comes round in another form. The echo of our song lingered in my ears, a caravan's hymn to loss and renewal. In each footstep I felt the caravan of seekers moving within me, companions in sorrow who had shown me that only together can we transform grief into grace. And as the sun climbed, gilding the dunes in gold, I carried their stories with me, a caravan of memory forging the path toward what I was yet to become. I felt my heart shatter one evening as the sun dipped below the horizon, its dying light casting long shadows across the courtyard where I stood alone. The weight of loss pressed upon me like a slabbed stone, cold and immovable. Each breath felt labored, as though the very act of drawing in air threatened to tear the fragments of my spirit apart. I had believed my heart indestructible, unyielding in its devotion to the beloved, but now I understood that even the strongest vessel can splinter under the force of anguish. In those first days after the blow, I wandered the corridors of the madrasa in a trance, my footsteps echoing hollowly against the tiled floors. The students greeted me with sympathetic glances, but the words of comfort they offered fell away like dust from my shoulders. I could not find solace in their kindness, for my pain was deeper than any consolation could reach. I retreated to my private chamber, the walls lined with scrolls of poetry, and stared at the verses I had written in seasons of joy and inspiration. They seemed distant now, as if penned by another soul, their rhythms unrecognizable in the storm that raged within me. Night after night, sleep eluded me. I paced beneath the silver eye of the moon, its pale glow a witness to my despair. Sometimes I would press my hand over my chest, feeling the ragged edges of my heart beneath my palm, and wonder how many fragments lay hidden behind the skin. Would they ever coalesce again, or was I condemned to wander the world as a broken reed? Then, on a night when the heavens were clothed in stars, I heard it, a faint stirring in the stillness, as if some creature down below was testing the air with tentative wings. I stopped and listened, a soft rustling, no more than a sigh. I followed the sound to the ancient pomegranate tree that grew beyond the garden wall. Its gnarled branches reached toward the sky, bare now of leaves, but its trunk pulsed with life. I pressed my ear against its bark and felt a faint heat, a rhythm too measured to be mere sap moving through wood. It was as though the tree itself bore a heart, one that had been worn away and was now gathering strength for rebirth. In that moment, I recognized the spark of hope within my own chest. Though my heart lay in ruin, embers still glowed among the ash. Loss had not extinguished my capacity to feel, it had burned away what was brittle and left behind the substance that could withstand the crucible. I placed my hand upon the tree's trunk as if seeking kinship, and in that touch I felt a promise. what is consumed by fire can rise again, wreathed in wings of flame. The next morning, I awoke with a determination I had not felt since before the wound. I gathered scraps of parchment and ink and began to write. My hand moved with a deliberate slowness, each word a careful offering. I did not seek beauty or elegance, only honesty. I confessed my brokenness, naming each shard of pain I carried. And with each line, I felt the hollow of my heart widen, not to admit more emptiness, but to create a space where new life might take root. As the days passed, I found that my writing became an act of forging. I worked at the anvil of my sorrow, hammering my anguish into shapes of meaning. I wrote of the flames that consume the old self, of the fire that refines rather than destroys, of the wings that emerge from the furnace of suffering. My words gathered around me like sparks leaping from a hearth, lighting the darkness and revealing the outline of something transformed. One afternoon, I ventured forth to the riverbank for the first time since my heart's collapse. The water rushed past with its familiar vitality, indifferent to my despair. I dipped my fingers into its current and let the cool flow wash over my skin. To my surprise, the river did not taunt my grief, it seemed to understand it. The water carried fragments of driftwood and petals and remains, weaving them into its onward sweep. Nothing was lost, all that fell into its embrace returned in another form, carried somewhere new. I sat on a flat stone at the water's edge and closed my eyes. In the pulse of the river, I heard the echo of my own heartbeat. It was not stilled but slow, deliberate, an invitation to match its rhythm, to let my heart learn the dance of regeneration. I realized then that I could not cling to the shape my soul had once held. I must surrender it to the current of change, trusting that the flow of life would carry me toward a new horizon. In the following weeks, I rose before dawn and returned to the riverside. I carried with me a folded cloak, a loaf of dry bread, and my satchel of scrolls. Each morning, I read aloud the verses I had written, letting the wind carry my words downstream. Sometimes fishermen paused to listen, nodding as though they too recognized the resonance of loss and renewal. Other times, I was alone with the sky and the rippling water, my voice a solitary prayer echoing against unseen shores. With every recitation, I felt the brittle edges of my heart soften. Fragment by fragment, the pieces began to shift, aligning in patterns I could not yet name. One dawn, as the sky blushed with first light, I felt a warmth within my chest, not the fire of sorrow but the glow of emergence. My breath came easy, light as the whisper of breeze through reeds. I stood and watched the sun rise, its rays sparkling on the river's surface like scattered gemstones. At that moment, I sensed the phoenix beating its wings inside me, stirring in the ashes to reclaim the sky. Loss had been my crucible, now I was ready to ascend. I returned to the madrasa transformed. Where once I moved like a shadow of my former self, I now walked with a quiet buoyancy. My eyes held a deeper clarity, my words carried a resonance born of fire. Students gathered as I spoke, not merely to hear verses but to witness the living proof that suffering need not end in ruin. In my own story, they found the map of their potential rebirth. In the evenings, I retired to my chamber and lit a single lamp. I took up my reed pen and wrote new poems, songs of wings unfurled, of flames that heal rather than devour, of hearts forged in the hottest trials. The ink glowed on the parchment like molten gold, each letter a testament to the alchemy of loss. I marveled at how what had nearly destroyed me became the source of my greatest creation. And so I stand now, my heart a phoenix renewed. Its wings may bear the scars of fire, but those scars are the patterns of its beauty. In the embers of my grief, I discovered the power to resurrect myself, to rise from the ashes with vision sharpened by loss, with compassion deepened by suffering, with a song that carries others beyond despair. Whenever I feel the stirrings of doubt, I rest my palm upon my chest and feel the steady thrum of life reborn. The lesson of the crucible endures. What is broken can be rekindled, and in the flames of transformation, we find our true purpose soaring on wings of fire. I raise my voice before the first light of dawn, standing atop a gentle rise where the world seems hushed in anticipation. In my hands I cradle a simple reed flute, its surface worn smooth by breaths. With trembling lips, I bring it to my mouth and let the first note rise, a solitary thread of sound stretching across the sleeping valley. That single tone carries the weight of every sorrow I have known, yet within its quiver there is also a fragile hope, as though grief itself were an instrument shaped to bear witness to the dawn. With each breath I draw, the melody unfolds, weaving through the cool air like a silken ribbon. I do not play for applause or acclaim, I play for those whose hearts have been cleft by absence, mothers mourning lost children, travelers bereft of home, souls undone by silent farewells. My song is their vessel, carrying their unspoken grief upon its wings and offering them sanctuary in its embrace. As the reed song spirals upward, I feel it gather every shattered longing, every fragment of despair, and transmute them into a river of sound that flows beyond the borders of my own sorrow. The villagers stir at the edges of their doorways, drawn by the plaintive tune. I do not pause my playing to seek them out. Instead, I let the music find its way to them, slipping through narrow lanes, across dew-damp fields, beneath shuttered windows. Gradually, they emerge, farmers with calloused hands, children rubbing sleep from their eyes, elders leaning on their staffs, and stand as silent witnesses. Their eyes glisten with recognition. This is their lament, voiced by another who has walked the same path of loss. In that shared moment, the boundaries between me and them dissolve. We become one body of remembrance, united by the chords of the lost. My melody shifts then, moving from the minor keening of lament to a more tender strain, a whispered lullaby for broken hearts. Each note is a droplet of comfort, falling gently upon the parched earth of their spirits. I imagine those droplets seeping into the deepest crevices of their grief, stirring seeds of resilience buried long ago. I play of a mother's lullaby that lingers in dreams, of a friend's laughter echoing in memory, of the promise that even when a song ends, its echo endures. The tune rises in crescendo, then softens to a hush, carrying the message that sorrow need not be a prison but can open like a flower to reveal new beauty. As the sun's first rays gild the rooftops, a soft breeze catches the last notes of the flute and carries them across the valley to distant hills. I lower the reed and stand in the luminous hush, feeling the resonance of the silence that follows. It is not emptiness but a space filled with the echoes of my song, the lingering embrace of grief and hope intertwined. I breathe deeply, savoring the moment when loss and renewal stand hand in hand, teaching that every departure contains the seed of return. In the days that follow, the song transforms and travels. Travelers on dusty roads whistle fragments of its melody, merchants hum its refrain in crowded markets, poets weave its cadences into their verses. The song becomes a living presence, a companion to the bereaved in countless lands. I hear of mothers singing its lullaby to children born after tragedy, of soldiers chanting its chorus before departing for distant campaigns, of lovers whispering its final strain beneath moonlit skies. Each new voice reshapes it, infusing it with fresh textures and echoes, until the song of the lost becomes the song of all seekers. I close the door softly behind me and step into the vast hush that blankets the world at twilight. The lantern's flame wavers once, then settles into steady glow, casting gentle circles of light that into the shadows gathering at the edges of the chamber. In this quiet, my thoughts slow, each one a hesitant breath drawn from the deep well of stillness. Here, in the embrace of silence, I feel loss and longing settle around me like a velvet cloak, heavy at first, until I lean into its folds and discover that its weight holds me, steadies me, teaches me to be fully present in every moment of absence. I set aside my scrolls and ink, the instruments of speech and song, and let my hands rest upon my knees. The words I once summoned so eagerly now hover on the brink of utterance, but I do not reach for them. Instead, I listen. The silence reverberates with subtle sounds, the soft echo of my heartbeat, the faint whistle of wind through distant arches, the barely audible sigh of the oil lantern as it draws breath. Each sound surfaces and fades as though I were tuning myself to the universe's most delicate pulse. In this hush, I recall the many forms of loss I have known, the departure of beloved friends, the fading of youthful hopes, the inevitable unraveling of that which I once believed eternal. Each departure left an empty chamber within me, and yet, in the silent aftermath, I discovered that these vacant spaces were not voids but sanctuaries. They became the sacred altars upon which remembrance and renewal intertwine. I inhabit these chambers now, exploring their contours in the absence of noise, feeling how they echo with memory and anticipation alike. A breeze drifts through the open window, carrying the cool breath of evening jasmine. I close my eyes and inhale deeply, letting its fragrance fill my lungs and wash through my mind. In that scent I recognize the essence of all transformations. Flowers bloom only to fade, petals fall to nourish the earth, and in their decay lies the promise of new growth. The jasmine's perfume is both farewell and greeting, a reminder that every sound that has ceased to be heard still resonates in the quiet spaces between reflections. My fingers brush the smooth wood of the windowsill, seeking the sensation of touch when sight and sound withdraw their claims. The grain of the wood tells its own story, rings of seasons layered beneath my palm, silent testament to years of weather and renewal. In that unspoken narrative I find kinship. My own life, like the trees, has known cycles of flourishing and withering, and in each season the stillness between extremes nurtures the seed of what will come. Minutes or hours pass, I cannot tell, and the silence deepens until it becomes a presence, a companion whose language is felt rather than heard. In its company, my breath slows to the rhythm of the unseen currents that flow through all existence. I sense the world's hidden harmonies, the patient unfolding of stars, the tremor of roots seeking moisture underground, the subtle shift of time as it slides between past and future. Silence is the tapestry upon which these threads of being intertwine, revealing the interconnectedness of all things. In that realization, sorrow itself transforms. What once felt like a breach in my soul now appears as a doorway. Each loss has opened me to a broader perspective, a deeper attunement to life's unspoken symphony. I remember faces that have vanished, voices that have quieted, dreams that dissolved, and I honor them here in this sanctuary, where silence allows me to touch their essence without the distraction of longing. In the emptiness of sound, their presence becomes more vivid than any echo could convey. I rise and step barefoot onto the cool flagstones of the courtyard beyond. The moon has risen, pale and watchful, bathing the world in muted silver. In this lunar stillness, even the breeze seems hesitant, as if not to break the spell. I walk slowly among the shadows, feeling the stones beneath my feet, sensing the slow arch of each breath in my lungs. The courtyard is alive with silence, the faint rustle of ivy against ancient walls, the hush of petals as they drift to the ground, the soft breathing of the night itself. Here, I am neither past nor future, but wholly present, an atom in the vast silence that cradles the cosmos. Beneath an olive tree, I pause. Its gnarled trunk rises from the earth like a pillar of remembrance. I press my palm against the bark and close my eyes, tuning myself to the stillness within its wooden heart. It has weathered drought and storm, standing firm when every living thing around it bent or broke. In its silent resilience, I discern the blueprint of my own survival. Loss did not shatter me beyond repair, it reshaped me, carving chambers of spaciousness where compassion and wisdom could dwell. A lone nightingale sings somewhere in the trees, its song a delicate thread weaving through the quiet. I open my eyes and listen as its melody rises and falls, a solitary voice full of longing and grace. The bird does not fear the hush, it trusts the silence to carry its song to distant ears. In that trust, I find encouragement. My own voice may falter or fail, but the courage to speak, or to remain silent, carries its own authority. Words and quiet alike are woven into life's tapestry, each indispensable in its moment. I return to the chamber and light a single incense stick. Its fragrant smoke curls upward, twisting into the still air. The scent reminds me that even the subtlest of substances can leave a lasting impression. In life's silence, my smallest acts can resonate far beyond their apparent scale. A compassionate gesture, a whispered prayer, a moment of undistracted presence, these are the echoes that endure in the quiet corridors of the heart. Before the lantern's flame dims entirely, I offer a prayer of gratitude for silence that unveils the sacred spaces within and around me, for loss that reveals the depth of love, for stillness that bridges the seen and unseen, and for the promise that in the absence of noise, all forms of being return to the One. With that prayer, I lay my head upon my cushion and surrender to the hush. Sleep comes not as an escape but as a continuation of this sacred vigil, a deep exhalation into the arms of silence. And when I wake with the first light of dawn, I carry this embrace of silence within me. In every breath, I hear the measured beat of life renewed. In every moment, I know that silence is not an absence to fear but a presence to cherish, a fertile ground where grief and grace grow side by side, where endings become beginnings, and where anything we lose truly comes round in another form. I stand upon the summit of memory's mountain as dawn's first light spills across the valley below, painting every contour with a luminous promise. The air is crisp, scented with the dew of wildflowers cling to rocky ledges, and in that fragrance I sense the convergence of every loss I have known. Here, at the threshold between earth and sky, I feel the weight of my journey and the fullness of its countless transformations. All that I once carried, youthful dreams, cherished companions, vanished hopes, has gathered in this dawnlit panorama, each element returning in a new guise to greet me. My mind travels first to the laughter of childhood, echoing through the orchards of my family's home. Those carefree days, bound by the simplicity of sun and shade, seemed eternal until time's current swept them away. Yet here, in the glimmer of dew on petals, I taste their sweetness once more. The innocence of morning light recalls the unbroken joy of play. The soft murmur of a distant brook carries the echo of my first poems, scribbled among fallen leaves. I kneel and touch a blossom, tracing its veins, and know that the child I was lives on in every bloom that opens to the sky. I rise and continue walking along the ridge, my footsteps guided by the invisible thread that links past and present. The path leads me to memories of early friendship, the companionship of another soul whose presence once felt like home. When that friend departed, my heart contracted with grief. But now, in the laughter of a nearby brook and the play of sunlight on rippling water, I recognize the form in which that bond has returned. Their spirit flows through these channels, whispering secrets in every ripple and inviting me to drink deeply of life's unending song. Further along, the terrain grows rugged, reminders of trials survived and wounds endured. There was a time my heart lay broken among these stones, shards of hope scattered like fractured glass. Yet I see now that each jagged edge gleams in the light, refracting the sun's rays into a prism of possibility. Loss became the crucible that sharpened my vision, and from its fire emerged the clarity to discern beauty in imperfection. I pick up a sun-warmed pebble and roll it between my fingers, feeling the smooth surface shaped by countless tumbles, proof that what is shattered can be polished by time. Beyond the rocky rise, the path descends into a verdant glen where wild roses climb over mossy logs. Here, grief's most profound form awaited me, the departure of love, the severing of a bond deeper than blood. In the ache that followed, my world narrowed to the echo of an absent voice. Yet in this valley, every thorn emboldens the bloom. The roses release their fragrance into the warm air, and I breathe in the lesson that suffering and sweetness grow entwined. The petals, soft and flush with color, carry within them the memory of my tears, transmuted into beauty that invites every traveler to pause and remember that love's essence cannot be lost, it simply changes shape. I wander onward until the trees thin, and the glen opens onto a vast plain where windflowers sway in rhythmic salute. Their fragile petals tremble in the breeze, each one a testament to the resilience born of exposure. I recall seasons of isolation, times when my spirit felt as vulnerable as these blossoms under an open sky. Yet I find solace here. Just as the windflowers bend without breaking, my spirit learned to yield to life's gales while remaining rooted in faith. Each flower that nods its head is a reminder that flexibility is strength, and that what endures is not the rigid form but the living essence within. My journey continues toward a distant forest, where shafts of light pierce the canopy in mottled patterns. Here, the hush of whispered leaves recalls the silence that once felt oppressive after every farewell. Yet now, silence reveals the fullness of sound hidden within, birdsong, rustle of foliage, the pulse of hidden streams. It is in the hush that nature intones its deepest truths, that absence frames presence, that the spaces between notes give music its soul. I close my eyes and listen, feeling the forest's breath rise and fall in harmony with my own. The silence holds me tenderly, showing that emptiness is but an invitation to perceive more deeply. At the forest's edge, I come upon a circle of ancient stones, weathered by centuries of sun and rain. Pilgrims before me carved their intentions here, leaving behind offerings of clay and carved symbols of hope. I place a hand upon the cool surface of the nearest stone and feel the pulse of many hearts echoed through time. In this communion, I understand that loss has linked me to countless seekers who have walked this path. Their grief, engraved in moss and lichen, becomes mine, and mine theirs. In this great chain, nothing is ever truly lost. Every story endures in the living memory of the world. With reverence, I lay my palm flat and whisper a prayer of gratitude, for the tears that watered my soul, for the wounds that opened me to compassion, for the departures that taught me trust in the unseen. As I step back, the morning sun breaks through the trees with sudden brilliance, illuminating every speck of moss, every curve of stone, every petal of flower. The valley below shimmers in gold, a tapestry woven from every strand of loss and renewal. I raise my arms and breathe deeply, my heart full of the harmonized song of all that has been and all that will be. Descending from the mountain, I carry this vision in my bones. Each step toward the world below is an extension of this revelation, that every ending is the threshold of a new beginning, every departure the harbor of a fresh arrival. In the laughter of children at play, in the fragrance of rose and jasmine, in the hush of ancient woods, in the cry of birds at dawn, I find the myriad forms in which my losses have returned. My footsteps press these truths into the earth, so that all who wander here may learn what I have learned. Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in another form.